opposition preview for Everton v Aston Villa. Delighted to be joined by Alex from the Toffee Blues. How you doing, mate?
I'm doing good, thank you, mate. Thank you for having me.
I guess on the side of Everton, it's been quite quiet in the last couple of days. Not really much to talk about, is there really? But no, just talk to me about the season as a whole before we get into Moyes and what's happened with Dyche recently.
Oh, well, I was hoping to start on a bit more of a positive note, but yeah, if we're going over the season as a whole, it's not been great. It's got to be said. I think there was quite a bit of expectation this summer, a bit randomly really, because the club's still, it's been a basket case for the last few years, and we've had so much to deal with over the last few years, and last year, in spite of everything, in spite of all the points deductions, we managed to put together some really good results, really, and obviously I think with the without the deduction, the points total we got would have got us into around 12th, and so I think with that, and with some of the signings we made in the summer, the likes of Ndai in particular, who was coming and really impressed, to be fair. I think a lot of people are starting to think maybe we can, maybe these relegation battles are behind us a bit, but yeah, it hasn't quite panned out that way. We seem to have regressed a little bit. And in attack in particular, we look as poor as we have in a long time, and so yeah, I think once the ownership came in, there was a lot more incentive of getting Dyche out, and starting afresh, and obviously we managed to get a few decent results in December. Grinding out some good draws against some of the top sides in the league, but still weren't really looking like we were going to win many games. I think it's still only 3 league wins we've got all season, and so yeah, eventually, a bit of a shock to us really. It was announced just a few hours before we had the cup game against Peterborough. Dyche was going to go, but then after that, things moved very quickly, and I think Moyes was announced on Saturday or Sunday. And we're usually a club that takes forever over these decisions, but finally, we managed to get something done over the line quickly. And I think when Moyes was first announced, we were all a bit there was a bit 50-50. Some people were a bit unsure about going back and things like that, whether we was able to recapture the magic. But I think since hearing him talk and hearing his first press conference, I think there's a lot more positivity around now, and he does seem very intent on building this team, which is finally a bit of a positive for us this season.
Yeah, I mean, I do watch Everton quite a lot. I don't know, you're just one of these teams that whenever you're playing, I'll watch. I don't know why. I don't know I don't have a second team, but I do watch you quite a lot, and I've always felt like very defensively sound, like pretty solid. And what you're talking about, that those December sort of fixtures, you were looking quite good, really. And then from a Villa fan, quite out the blue, he loses his job last week. Moyes comes in now. So as an Evertonian, then, is it just from now until the end you're happy to just see how it goes, and then in the summer rebuild going into your new stadium? Like, what's the feeling around the place? Because getting Moyes back, it's sort of, does it feel like you want to have that same feeling as what you had the first time round, where you sort of like challenging it in those European places? Like, what's sort of like the purpose of Moyes being back, basically?
Yeah, well, I think when it was first mooted, I think as you say, I think a lot of people kind of just viewed it as a bit of a stopgap, a safe pair of hands, steer us away from danger, get us into this new stadium, still a Premier League club, which has just been the sole target for the last few years. But I don't know, listening to him talk, and the fact that he signed a 2.5-year contract, not even some people are saying give him 18 months, see how he does, give him the first season at Bramley-Moore if he does all right. But 2.5-year deal he signed out, and the way he talks, he just seems like he is desperate to get us back up this table, and that he's not going to rest unless he does it. And as you say, I think a lot of the pundits' reactions and things like that, and probably for a lot of neutral fans, it does maybe look like we're just trying to recreate the old formula. We've still never properly replaced him, and it's been 12 years now. We still haven't properly managed to find anyone who's able to match up the levels that he set. And so it might look a little bit like we're trying to recreate that old thing. But I just point to the job he did at West Ham only a few years ago. Very similar situation. Came in the middle of the season when West Ham were really at a lower point than they probably should have been, really struggling. Managed to keep them up pretty safely, and then next few years was able to get them pretty much straight into Europe and into the top six consistently for a few years. Then wins his European trophy. And all in a much shorter space of time. And he's been saying in his press conferences, there's no way he's going to be here for another 11 years. He's not. No one would expect that. But a 3 or 4, 5 year project, I don't think is beyond the realms of possibility. And just to get us competing again. So fingers crossed, that's what he can achieve. But yeah, we'll see how it pans out.
I think for him as well. I think a big thing. I think he wants to be loved. I don't think he was loved at West Ham. How I hear the fans talk about him, it's quite sort of disrespectful really to him, because he's won a European trophy, and the way they're so happy for him to walk away and leave. I know sometimes the football might not be the best, but he had them, like you say earlier, challenging at the right places, and I think one little bad season, and I think they all want him gone. And I do really believe that he probably really didn't feel that appreciated there, and he'll probably get that sort of feeling back with the Everton fans as well. Obviously, results have got to improve and stuff, but I think it probably will be a good match. So you have got new owners then. So what's the feeling around those owners? Because I know the last owner, the feeling weren't good, was it? So how are you all feeling about the new owners? And talk to me about like the new stadium. What you're hoping to get from that as well. Maybe not just football, but you're hoping it's going to increase revenue with like what Spurs do with concerts and stuff like that.
Well, yeah, I think as you say, we're based on the whole Mashiri experience, if you want to call it that. There's probably a few other words you could use instead of that, but yeah, I think we're all a little bit wary, like when we don't want to get fully on board with the whole regime yet. But the early signs have been pretty positive, to be fair. They've pretty much wiped our debts straight away. Which were a real worry for us. And obviously the news has come out today that we're compliant with PSR, which I think was playing on people's minds quite a bit, because Premier League have shown in the last few years they're more than happy to make an example of us if they get the opportunity. So we're in the clear with that. And so yeah, and like I said, I think when they came in, there was a lot of expectation that on the first day they'd say Dyche is gone, get someone in, go really ambitious, and set their intentions straight out. But they didn't quite do that, and the reports seem to be that it was almost a mutual decision, that Dyche almost came to them and said, I don't think I can take this team any further, and which gives the impression that the Freakins were actually willing to give him a chance, and maybe even give him the rest of the season to keep us up, and then when his contract expired in the summer, move on. Which I think is quite a positive sign to me. I think, I know it's so easy for new owners to just come in and, as I say, just completely, go about changing things instantly and really set their mark. But yeah, as I said, I don't think they're quite doing that yet. So that's a positive for me. And yeah, obviously the new stadium is really exciting for us. Season tickets went on sale yesterday as we record this. So to the very first, the oldest season ticket holders got first dibs, and I get to see what their new seats are going to be like at the new ground. So that's all really exciting. And yeah, as I say, for the last few years, it's all just been get us into the new stadium as a Premier League club. That's all we need, and then we can look to build on from there. And now we've got the new owners, hopefully a bit of financial backing, hopefully able to spend a bit more in the summer at least, but maybe not in this January, but in the summer. Now we're PSR compliant and that, and hopefully we can look up the table now. Fingers crossed.
Yeah, no, it sounds good. It sounds like it's all going pretty well at the minute then. So talk to me about the players that have been standing out so far this season. You know, I've been on your channel and I've spoke about and of how good he is. So I guess that's a good place to start. And then maybe touch on sort of like how Irabunan's been doing as well.
Well, yeah, Ndiaye, that I say was the standout signing from the summer. Absolutely, got him for a pretty reasonable fee for I think 24. I think he was when we signed him. I don't know if he still is. Hadn't had the best season at Marseille, but I'd really impressed at Sheffield United in the Championship. And he was someone who we'd been after the summer before, and had finally managed to get in after Marseille clearly didn't fancy him. And yeah, the early signs have been really good. We just haven't he just hasn't quite produced enough end product wise. He's got a few goals, but maybe hasn't been getting enough assists. And I think a lot of people would say he hasn't been used properly. It seems like his best position's probably in the middle, really influencing play, whereas Dyche has been having him out more on the left a bit more, where he gets a bit more isolated and doesn't maybe get involved as much as he'd like. But yeah, the fans have taken to him straight away because we've been on our knees for just someone with a bit of excitement who can actually just take on players, and doesn't just lump it up every time they get the ball. So yeah, that's been a really positive sign. And to be fair, Irabunan when he first came in was very similar as well. The fans were really excited by him in the first few games, and I think. I don't think he's quite got the experience yet to be like a solid midfielder, and I think our defence maybe suffered a little bit for it, but he was very engaging on the ball and very positive, I thought, and was able to pick out a few good passes, go on a few charging runs. Clearly got a great bit of physicality about him. It's just knowing where he needs to be in his positioning and maybe defensive side of things. He needs to work on a bit more, and hopefully Moyes can get that into him a bit more. But he's been injured for a long time, to be fair to him as well. I don't think he's played a game for us since like September. But yeah, I think fans are very excited to see more of him once he comes back into the fold, definitely.
Yeah, I think Moyes will get the best out of him as well, because I think for whenever I just think of a player signing for Everton with Dyche, it was always like he'll take parts of your game away, so you just become more solid. Like, so I think players that can have that little bit more freedom and be a little bit more expressive rather than sort of being like constrained to just being like a sideways passer, etc. I think he'll do really well as well for you then. So talk to me a little bit about line up then. What are you thinking Moyes is going to do? Is it I think you've got Brozier out injured, Calvert-Lewin, is he off? So is it better up front? So, what are you sort of wanting to see from the lineup against Villa?
Yeah, well, obviously we're pretty much as in the dark as you guys are. To be fair, we have no idea if it's going to be completely changed up. I have in my head it's not going to be too dissimilar to how we've been playing, formation wise anyway. Yeah, like I said, apparently Calvert-Lewin's in training. No one's entirely sure. We're not very good at giving updates on injuries and stuff like that. We're usually a bit in the dark about it. But apparently Calvert-Lewin trained on Monday, which gives the impression that he's fit, maybe. But yeah, as you say, it will either be him or Beto starting up front, and because with Brozier out, and then I imagine it will be quite similar, really. I think I'd imagine Doucouré will start. Obviously, as you said in our video, I think Doucouré could be quite effective for us under Dyche. I mean, under Moyes, I should say. And I mean, I'm intrigued to see what sort of role he'll be given in this team if indeed he does start. But I imagine it'll be mostly similar type of players. Just Gay, who you guys will know all about, of course, and with Mangala in that kind of solid midfield base that I think Moyes will want to stick with. And then, hopefully the role someone like Ndiaye will have, or Lindstrom on the right, can make them a bit more effective for us and give us a bit more thrust going forward.
Yeah, I think that's what you need. Bit more pay, bit attacking as well, not just so like defensive. So, what have you made of Villa this season?
I've been so impressed with Villa for a number of years. I say I think the way the club have been managed, when you came up for the first few years under Dean Smith, and just sticking in there for a bit, with Grealish being the star man and that, and then once he goes, rebuilding the side with the money and invested very well. And then as I touched on, obviously, we have our own feelings about Gerrard, which, to be fair, are probably quite similar to Villa ones now. To be fair, but I never thought he was able to get the best out of that team, and I remember thinking that squad is really good. It just needs the right manager, and obviously once Emery came along, he provided exactly that. And obviously last season getting into the Champions League, pretty much at the first attempt, his first full season in charge was incredible. And as expected, it always seems to be the way when a club gets into the Champions League for the first time. It's not quite as electric the next season, because obviously it's a lot to manage. You've got to build up your squad depth and stuff, and obviously, with our similar PSR struggles, you weren't quite maybe able to build on the squad maybe as much as you would have liked in the summer. But I'm still so impressed by Villa and the way they play. And I know you're in eighth in the table at the moment, but it's very tight in there at the moment, and you're obviously still very much in contention for Champions League places. So got a lot of time for Villa and the way they play. I think when you guys beat us earlier in September, obviously we got into that shock 2-0 lead, but I think the way you guys fought back is about as good as I've seen any team play this season. It's got to be said. So hopefully no similar in this game, but yeah.
Yeah, well, Duran's back, so Pickford needs to stay on his line. So talk to me then finally before we go then. What can Villa expect? What can Onana expect if he plays? Is he going to get booed, or is he okay with you guys?
He's okay with me. I've never had any problem with Onana, and I could see the ability there. As you touched on, I think he's a prime example of a player limited by the way Dyche plays, and Dyche's style. And I think you would have had to been stupid to think that he was going to go to Villa and not be effective. I thought, in a system like yours, I thought he was tailor made for it, and as it's proved, he hasn't. Obviously, I know he's not been. He's had a few struggles of injury, hasn't he? So he's not been like a consistent week in, week out starter, but it's clearly been a solid player for you guys. But he'll almost certainly get the booing treatment. Digne will probably get the booing treatment if he plays, because that's just what our fans are like. But I've got no problem with Onana at all. I just hope he has a bad game tomorrow.
And so sort of thoughts on the game then. What do you think it's going to be really hostile, or is it going to be quite relaxed, or what can we expect?
Well, a game under the lights, and obviously with the Moyes factor, I think there's going to be a lot of positivity at the first whistle, and I think after that it will depend on how we play. And I'd like to think Moyes is canny enough to know that if we start with intensity and start aggressively and really look to get at you more than we have done in recent weeks, then the fans will respond, and hopefully they'll harness that energy. And the stereotypical 12th man, will hopefully see us get a good result.
Brilliant, mate. Well, it's been great chatting to you. It's been great being on your channel as well. And I know a lot of Villa fans really do like Everton. So, the very few opposition fans we have on, this is probably the one where Villa fans will be wishing you well and hoping that you sort of get your act together and sort yourself out, really. Because it's, I think sometimes as football fans, when you see a team in the doldrums, you're sort of all right with it for a bit. And then when it starts getting for that prolonged period of time, you're like, God, they need to sort it out now. And, it has been too long since you were even having good memories. So hopefully they start after Villa. But cheers for coming on, mate.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. And I completely agree on that. With the Moyes era, we were competing, weren't we? In the late 2000s, it was always us two knocking on the door of the top four. And hopefully those times can return again.
Definitely. Cheers, mate.